Hey friends, good morning, happy Friday. I hope you're all having a wonderful day so far. I have been thinking recently, so a lot of people are playing around with like the ketogenic diet right now. And a lot of people who maybe aren't playing around with it are wondering about it. And I just came back from this leadership retreat with my Beachbody team. And I thought it was really interesting because there were a lot of people who, like all of us as coaches, we have kind of generally the same idea about clean eating and about eating whole foods and really fueling our bodies well. But even within that, like a lot of us have had different experiences. We have different like modes of exercise that we prefer. Some of us, I like to run in addition to some of the workouts I do. And so that requires a different type of fuel necessarily than like a HIIT workout does, right? Like endurance athlete is very different than a CrossFit athlete. That's just a fact. Those two people aren't going to have the same meal plan. So it was interesting sitting and talking with all of these women who have done a lot of their own research in different areas and kind of coming together to talk about like what works best for our different clients and for ourselves and all that kind of stuff. And, keto is something though that is very different from how a lot of coaches approach nutrition. And, people had a lot of questions about it. There's a lot of confusion about what it really means and what really the levels are and if you can, enhance it in any way. And I would like to preface this with, I'm not a professional. I'm not a nutritionist. I am not an expert on ketosis or anything like that. What I am though is a runner. And about a year and a half ago, I realized that my nutrition was holding me back from feeling my best when I was running. I was having all kinds of digestive issues on long runs, and I really didn't feel good. And so I started learning more about different ways to fuel with fat as opposed to carbs, because I just, the more carbs I ate, the worse I felt. And that's kind of opposed to what traditional endurance athletes kind of talk about. So I started learning a lot from, all kinds of different podcasts and blog posts and all kinds of research that I could get my hands on about how to become more fat adapted for endurance training. And if you're interested, shoot me a message, feel free to comment or whatever. I'm happy to share resources with you that I've used if you are interested in any of this. I can't promise I'll have the answer to your question. If you ask me in the feed right now, I'll do my best. But I'll definitely go find it later for you if you have a question that I don't know the answer to right now. But so I'm not an expert, but I about a year and a half ago really started fueling with fat. I really started paying more attention to the quality of carbs that I was eating, to the amount of carbs that I was eating. And I did a lot of research because I was in that area already into keto. I knew some people who had done it who felt really good. And so I did a lot of learning about it. And so I think that I have some, at least a half a leg to stand on to give you a little bit of a rundown if this is all new to you. And if you're looking at it wondering should I try this? Is this something that might work for me? Is this something that I shouldn't even waste my time on? There's a lot of questions. So for people who don't know, hey Reagan, the ketogenic diet or keto, it's this hot word right now. Basically what it is, it's a super low carb intake. And what people assume then is that it's a super high fat intake. That doesn't necessarily have to be true, right? So the main thing is that you're dropping your carbs so why? Why do you do that? When you drop your carbs, it forces your body to produce ketones. So it's another kind of fuel that only gets produced when your body is burning fat for fuel instead of burning the glycogen, which is how carbohydrates get turned into muscle glycogen and stored in your muscles. So when it's using ketones instead, it's a whole different kind of fuel for your body. And so why people do this is because they say that it leads to, a clearer head, less inflammation, steadier energy sources. And the main reason here, the sciencey part of it is because it's a higher mitochondrial, reproduction. So your mitochondria increase in production, and that's what leads to all these other benefits. So here's the thing. Those are all great, right? Like we all want steadier energy. We all want, and fat loss. Obviously, that was like the main one that I didn't even say. I just, that was the assumption. So the main thing that people are looking for when they're doing this is body fat reduction, right? Because if you are burning fat for fuel, then you're burning up like all your extra junk that's hanging around. But so that all happens. I'm not so smart. I just listen to all these things because I'm a freak and my podcast list is out of control, but thank you. So basically the end goal of the lower carb to burn the fat to get the ketones is to increase the mitochondrial like bioactivity. So, but the thing is there's other ways to do that. Like exercise on its own also increases the mitochondrial activity. So keto isn't necessarily the only way to get these things to happen. And I think that's important to know. Okay, I took some notes because I felt like it was a lot of information. So other ways to do the same things. So when someone's in ketosis, all that means is that their body is burning fat for fuel. Really, that's what it means. And they have all these like strips and pee tests and all these different blood tests. And I don't know if they have saliva. They've got all kinds of tests to test if you're in ketosis. And here's the problem. None of them are very accurate. Why? Why aren't they accurate? It's not because you're buying a cheap test. It's not because you could be doing a blood test instead of a urine test. It's because every single person's body is so different. Just biologically, our responses to things are very different. It's like insulin. Like someone's insulin level might read here, but they are totally regular and this is how they are all the time and they feel great and they function. But for someone else, if their insulin level gets there, they're totally out of whack. And, like we all have all these different systems coming together. And so And I've listened to a lot of podcasts from people who have done extensive research with their own bodies, with, client groups, with bases. And they say that really none of these tests are very effective at saying like how deep into ketosis someone is. So that's the first piece to know. If you've been trying to do the ketogenic diet and you've been buying these things and you're like not really sure, like they don't mean that much. They really don't. It's like peeing on a pH stick to find your pH balance. Like that's really not helpful. There's too many other things that go into all that kind of stuff. So that's the first piece. And the other thing is that, so you're on this scale, right? You're on a scale always of how many ketones you're producing in your body and how much fat you're burning at any particular time as opposed to how much glycogen you're burning. So there's also a scale of like how many carbohydrates for you as an individual is going to keep you in that ideal fat burning stage. And that is anywhere from 25 carbs to 125 carbs, depending on your activity level, your metabolism, your biomechanical system. So to say that every single person must consume less than 25 carbs, that's like this standard keto thing is like less than 25 grams of carbs a day. To say that is unfair to your body because really you could have, maybe you have 20 grams of carbs on one day, but then you have 100 the next day and you're kind of fluctuating and your body has the opportunity to kind of adapt and change through that. And there's nothing that says in any of the research that you need to be like baseline, highest keto burning potential all the time, that there's no long-term benefit to that. So it's fine to dip in and out. So when it comes to keto, if you're looking at, so what I think is a better way to look at that. So you want to be focusing on eating less carbs, right? So you eat less carbs, right? We don't need to have this like label on it, because your body is doing the same thing. If you're eating less than 100 grams of carbs a day, chances are you're still burning fat for fuel, especially if you're doing if you're active, if you're mobile. So the next piece of this is who is keto right for? And who are these low carb diets right for? So, you know, I don't do keto. I do like a low carb, higher fat. Well, when I'm not pregnant, that's what I do. Right now, things are all out of whack. We won't even go into that. But, in general, like lower carb is good for the human body. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And it does, when you stick to a lower carb diet, you can achieve all these other things that keto is trying to achieve, especially if you pair it with intermittent fasting. So that's another kind of like hot button like word right now. And the reason it is because when you fast for an extended period of time, so like 12 to 16 hours, depending on your body, you're going to kickstart your fat burning centers, right? So if you're eating low carb and you're allowing yourself to have that fast, you're going to, Reagan, all about it. You're going to allow yourself to burn more fat, which when you turn into a fat burner, you have a clearer head, you have steadier energy, you burn up body fat, right? So those are the main reasons people choose keto which is a super stressful way to do it, when you also can benefit in the same ways from doing a low carb intermittent fasting, or even just low carb. Okay, so with that being said, who is keto right for, right? Because there's going to be people watching that are like, man, well, I'm still going to do it. Keto is good for very specific groups of people. If you have a lot of weight to lose, we're talking for sure over 50 pounds, but like 60, 80, 100 pounds to lose. You have a lot of excess body fat, and doing a strict keto diet absolutely will help you burn up that body fat. It will, if you're strict. And this is where it's hard for people. 25 grams of carbs a day is really hard because you eliminate a lot of food. You eliminate a lot of produce. You eliminate a lot of fiber that keeps you full longer by doing that. So, it's something that you can do periodically, maybe. And you know, if you're curious about this, then let's talk about it, and I can help you maybe figure out the right plan, and we can find you some resources to help you really nail down what would be best for you if you do have that much weight to lose and you think this is the right thing for you. So if you have a lot of weight to lose, keto has been proven to be very good. Typically, it's better for men than it is for women because it can really funk with your hormones. So, if you're a woman that has a lot of weight to lose, all of that weight is really funking with your hormones already, probably. So it's not going to hurt you to do keto. You're going to get rid of that body fat, and then you can get back into a good rhythm. You're going to have more success in the long term with it. If you're a man, that's just the fact, ladies. It's harder for women. It's harder on a woman's system. You're risking throwing a lot of other things out of whack if you really, really, really are trying to stick to that 25 grams of carbs. Whereas if you do, like I said, and you let yourself have a little bit, nobody's talking about getting crazy, but 100 grams of carbs a day is not going to impede you from being a fat burner as a woman. And then the other thing is that if you are someone who does really heavy workouts, keto might not be right for you. Especially if you're a woman. So if you do HIIT workouts, if you do circuit training, if you do CrossFit, if you do that and your goal is body fat loss, if your goal is fat loss and you do those workouts, you're not going to burn up fat. Your body you're not going to feel good working out because it's a different, you can do endurance sport on fat for fuel, but it is a lot harder on your body to ask it to do those quick reflex, I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but thrusting movements, really power exercises, without any glycogen stores. You're going to tear yourself up. And then keto is also really good for some illnesses, so Alzheimer's, and epilepsy, some brain, dysfunction. It's been proven to be really good for, and some cancers. A lot of cancer patients end up, I think it's specific to certain types of cancer, but anyway, so that's kind of who it's good for. So, in general, as far as diet is concerned, I think this is really a time to remember that moderation is key. And also to remember that as Americans, we eat way too many carbs. The average American eats like 2 or 3 or 4 times the amount of carbohydrates that they really need in a day. And if you sit down and look yourself in the mirror, you know it's true. If you've been struggling with getting your nutrition in line, getting your weight under control, if you feel like you're bloated and you're icky and you're not feeling the best way that you know you could, think about your carb intake. And I think you'll realize that like there is a lot of validity to the keto diet, and that's why it's kind of, you know what it is? It's kind of like how jean skirts are coming back. You know how like the denim skirts are all back in at the, you know, when you go to TJ Maxx, or if you go to the real mall, good for you. But there's all these denim, you know, whatever, like they're very stylish and sleek, whatever. The styles come back around, and so do the diets. This is basically Atkins on steroids, right? Like this is what the Atkins diet was in the 90s. And that's fine. And people who did Atkins had great results for a while. And it's not sustainable for people because they didn't feel good. And I don't know all the details of the Atkins diet. I know like the big picture ideas, but it's basically the same. So there's, it's cycling back, and that's good. I mean, it's good for us to be talking about eating less carbs, because by eating less carbs, you're reducing not only your body weight, girl, I know, I should have kept my denim skirts too. I have like one from college that's definitely not appropriate to wear anymore. But when you reduce your carbs, you're reducing your body fat, you're reducing your risk for so many diseases like heart disease, diabetes, all of these major players. They're carb consequences. They really are. So there is validity to the principles of this. I just challenge you to think about, before you decide to like dive into keto, because everyone says that it's like the cure all, really think about like what your goals are. Why is it that you think this might be a good solution for you? And then do some research, really, like reach out to somebody who you trust, who knows about it, or I'm happy to share the resources that I have found with you. I'm not going to pretend like I'm the end all be all opinion of any of this. But I do think it's important to not just follow the trends and really just learn for yourself, educate yourself. This is because it's a major shift. I mean, if you go from like the standard American diet to a keto diet, you're going to crash and burn. You're not going to have the habits in place. Like that's just a fact. It's hard. And I know people who've done it, and it's really hard. And I really like eating, and I don't want any of us to be like hating our meals, like mealtime shouldn't be stressful. And so I think knowing that the scale is a little more flexible also for like, you can stay in ketosis, you can stay like in that window and have a little bit more flexibility. Maybe that's like the biggest thing that I wanted to share about this, is that you don't have to be at 20 grams of carbs a day to be a fat burner. You really don't. And then just one more piece. So there's these companies now that are putting out exogenous ketones. I don't know if you've heard about these, but they say they're like fat burners and they're going to boost your weight loss and all this stuff. And I've seen a few of them recently. And so what people are wondering is, do they work? Is this worth it? Should I spend extra money on these exogenous ketones? They claim that they're going to like put me into ketosis, and really help me like jumpstart the fat burning. So here's what I'll tell you about those. I have listened to multiple podcasts there's only a few scientists in the world who have been studying these exogenous ketones, who have been like working on developing these products and getting them to market. And some of the podcasts that I listened to have interviewed them at different times over the past like year, as these products were getting closer and closer to market. And they asked a lot of really good questions about, like, who are these right for? Will this help the average person? What dietary changes do you need to make if you're using these? All that kind of stuff. And again, I'm happy to link you guys up with the podcast if you want to listen to the whole thing. They're a little dry. But basically, they don't work. They don't work the way that they're being advertised to work. So yes, they increase your blood ketones and like your free floating ketones or whatever. What they work for is if you are strictly following a ketogenic diet, and for that, for you to be considered in a strict keto phase, and for you to get, whether you're just intermittent fasting and being low carb or you're being keto, your body needs at least 6 weeks to adjust. You're not fat. This is not Instagram. You're not going to refresh. Okay. Your body needs time to adjust. Your systems have to all hit the refresh. So when you do a major diet change like this, you have to give your body time to react. So you need to have been doing a keto diet strictly for at least 6 weeks, and realistically probably at least a few months, probably 12 weeks. And you need to be, I was like, what does this note say? And you need to be more of an endurance athlete to see a result. So the people that saw results from the exogenous ketones were high level endurance athletes. They measured a 2% performance increase on race day when using exogenous ketones in their diets. And they were not, and what the other thing that they said, that this woman said, who has been a part of this research for 10, 15 years, maybe more than that, was that there's not enough research for them to ever suggest any layperson or even a extreme athlete use these every day. Because what she said was that when you're adding all these ketones to your body and you're not being strict with your diet so that your body is exclusively in that system. If your body is not exclusively creating ketones and burning fat for fuel, all you're going to do by adding ketones, if there's also glycogen, is confuse everything. Okay, so if you think that when you watch these commercials for these exogenous ketone brands and stuff, again, if you want to try it, go ahead and try it. But because I thought about it, because I did a couple marathons this spring and I thought that it might have been helpful. So that's why I was looking at this. But she said that if you're really having any sort of carb consumption and you have any glycogen stores that your body's using for fuel, it just confuses everything. And then it makes all of your processes actually harder. Which I thought was interesting and makes sense. So I don't know. It's been on my mind recently. And then after having been talking with all these coaches who had, we were all kind of brainstorming different things. And a lot of them even really didn't understand, the premise of it and kind of how it all worked. And I figure if my most health conscious friends aren't quite getting it, then I'm sure most people who are just kind of Googling around aren't getting it either. So I hope this is a little bit helpful maybe. If you've been thinking about it or just wanting to know more about keto, I'm happy to talk with you individually. I definitely believe that lower carb is the way to go for pretty much everybody. I mean, there's no reason to be consuming any sort of 100 grams of carbs, 125 grams of carbs a day really it's enough for most people. We think it's not because we have gotten in this, we're in this Kellogg's laden country that says that breakfast is the healthiest meal of the day, especially when you eat cereal. And that's just not true. So, I think there's a lot of validity to some of the keto principles. And I think you just need to tack on a little bit of moderation with that. And we will all be good to go. All right. So I hope you guys have a great Friday, a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.